Morning, everyone. Friday morning. This is the sixth live webcast from the Devmco group. Charles Thompson here. Today, we're going to be chatting on a couple of the issues pertaining to the two primary things that we've been talking about over the last 4 or 5 sessions. Location, obviously keeps coming up, the location on where to buy and how to buy. And then going into some of the more technical sides of security and how that's linked to location. So to get cracking, we talk about location, and I'm sure you've heard that over and over again, that it's location, location, location. So what do us as developers look for when we are planning a new developments? How do we look for location? So location for us is basically two facets. One's a macro location, so bigger global locations, a more larger precinct looked, and then two, it's micro. So I'm just going to quickly go into those two things because as a buyer, they also are seriously important issues for all of us to consider when we are buying. So macro location, what do we look for? First of all, in the KZN area, we generally like to be close to the sea or have sea views. And coastal regions, as we say, continue to grow, continue to have good price increases. So that's the first one. Secondly, convenient, close transport hubs. So close proximity to main arterial roads, the M4, the N2, close proximity to the CBD and amenities. So we typically believe that, obviously Umhlanga is the new CBD. We want to be close to that because people will buy and pay premiums and pay premium rentals for close, convenient locations to their workplaces. Proximity to other iconic or let's call it economic hubs such as the airport, gateway shopping center, hospitals, good schools, and then obviously the leisure side, which is beaches and restaurants and facilities like that. So that's on the macro side. So if we look at a large component of what we're investing into, it's the Sabaya area, literally ticks every box. You've got hospitals 3 kilometers away, you've got your gateway 3 kilometers away, CBD there, coastal forest running in front, which can't obstruct your views, access to the beach, access to the airport, very close access to all the the good schools in the area, all the Durban North schools, and then obviously probably about 10 minutes up the drag, you've got the Belito schools. So you've got all of those macro things that we look for, as Sabaya as a typical example, and obviously on the M4, direct access onto the N2 either over Sabaya or Mshloti. So but that basically you can see why we favor an area like this. Also, what we look at is the economic trends. Where are properties going? What has the market been doing over the last 10 years? And typically we see it, moving north. So we've seen it moving Morningside into Durban North, La Lucia, Umhlanga, Sabaya. So when we look at developing, we've got to look not just 3-4 years, we're looking 10 years ahead. That's the trend. And obviously as the Metropolis zone continues to expand, we see that that's going to actually create more jobs, create more demand around the airport zone. The Canubia close by. So that's economically, we also have to pay attention to that on the macro sphere. On the micro sphere, this is quite an important one, and people often don't pay attention to this. So as developers, you can always buy a good site with sea views, but how many of those homes or apartments on that site are going to have those sea views? So we've got to pay attention to, if it's an apartment block, as an example, we look to how many of, let's say, 100 apartments will have sea views. If the site's shaped in such a way that you're only going to get 30 or 40% of this of sites with sea views, because the actual location's great, the macro, but the micro is going to focus on access to forests, privacy, being an end unit, having courtyard access, having gardens that spill out privately, having sea views, having buffer zones on either side, as an example. So those are the micro issues. So to give you an example, a 2-bedroom apartment with road-facing views is a 2 million rand apartment. a 2-bedroom apartment, that exact same apartment, exact same finishes, with sea views and some privacy on the end, with some nice north-facing light, etc. Probably going to double that number. So the importance of micro aspects when you're looking at buying are almost equally as important as macro. So it's something that we look at to optimize, the uniqueness, the bespokeness of every single micro opportunity inside a large precinct. So those are some of the tips that we look at. And as a buyer, we can pull into those things, because when you're going, let's say to a property launch and you're looking for something, guys will typically, and we'll see it in our sales, we'll see the units that are on the ends or close to a green belt, or on the front row with privacy and some sea views, not overlooking people. Those units will typically go first. Obviously, as developers, we know that those are the most premium units, so you price those up accordingly. But what I would say to the buyer is do your homework, because you will always find 5 or 6 outlying, apartments or homes that actually are maybe underpriced compared to the rest. So, and not everyone's dead set on sea views. Some guys would rather have more land. So, just pay attention to the pricing, analyze it, look at your rates per square, look at that price of a plot as an example compared to the one next door, and just do a bit of homework. Take your laptop if you need to a launch, sit down, do some little calcs on rate per square and all those type of things. So that's my tip to the buyer is, we've talked about this interest rate dropping. We've talked about, how the banks have to lend now. They really are going to be stimulated to lend. We've got really, really, really low interest rates. Potentially, I'm not going to call another one because I got one right, but I don't want to mess it up. But I really do think we're going to see another 0.5%, maybe even another 1% drop over the next three odd months. So it's going to continue to drop, and the banks actually cannot, the Reserve Bank can't afford to actually up that rate, because we try to stimulate the economy and get cash flowing. So I think we've got a good year to 18-month period where these interest rates are going to stabilize at a seriously low base, almost unprecedented to what we've seen. Okay, so just quickly into the next topic, security. How does security link to this locational buying, and why is it so important? One, security is security. Great. We all want to be safe when we go to bed at night. We can, don't have to lock the doors, close the treadly doors, put the alarm on, put the beams on. So living in a secure state gives you that convenience living and the comfort of knowing that you're living in a safe environment. So that's obviously primary. But coupled with that, and what this coronavirus lockdown has exposed, is what's the convenience around the security? Are you mowing your lawn? Are you cleaning a pool every day? Are you able to go and kick a ball around in a park in a secure environment? So the convenience of having those facilities is coupled with the security that you're buying into. And I think the other thing which I've been thinking about over the last couple of days is with that framework set up for security and the facilities management around that. I think what's also quite interesting is that security can actually lead into health security as well. So the ability to set up cleaning points, delivery drop-off zones, stations where you can sanitize your hands, and et cetera, going into lifts, all those type of things. It's way more controllable. You don't have any outside influences, so you don't have a guy delivering post, or a guy, municipalities coming to pick up bins. All that stuff is dealt with by the body corporate. So your bins, you take them down to a bin room and then you leave. You get your shopping, move into your estate, all the hand sanitizers, facilities, simple things. I think if you look on the web page that we've introduced biometric touch-free scanners, so you just literally swipe your hand through a biometric rather than actually touching anything. Those are the things that, if you've got a really well-managed, secure estate, those are the little fringe benefits that if we ever had something like this re-emerge again, learning lessons from this, we can actually almost adapt our security framework to be cognizant of these future risks. And that is what breeds value. So the convenience blended with the ability to manage properly, privately manage, have security. That is what, and if you go back to that curve that we've got on the graph, That's why we're getting the 8 to 10% growth. The demand for that style of lifestyle, the safety, the simplicity, is going to continue to run, and the converse, the negative slope of having to do mow your 1,000 square meter lawn, worry about security, put the beams on, sanitize your gates and your trash and all that type of stuff, and have these interactions that you don't really want to particularly in a time like we are now. Um, that's why I believe that we'll continue to see growth. So we're going to jump straight into the questions. We're going to just try and keep it nice and tight today. Just 10 minutes of questions. So Terence says, how do we as consumers almost forecast an area 10 years from now and what the security will look like then? What do we look at? What sets the buyer precinct apart? Okay, so basically I think I've covered most of it. But as a buyer, you want to make sure you're buying in an area that in 5-10 years' time is still prime, because we want to optimize the growth in our assets. We want to keep that 8 to 10% growth, and we want to look at maybe 5 years' time. We're selling it, we're accruing the capital out because that precinct has continued to perform and it's in a good location. So the answer to that, look at the trends. We know in the KZN area, particularly around the Durban's area, we've city migrated. We've pulled out of Durban. Durban's no longer seen as the CBD of our KZN region. It's actually we are decentralizing from there. We've moved into the Umhlanga area. Umhlanga in turn has spread out backwards into Umhlanga Ridge, into Umhlanga Newtown area, which is around the back of Gateway, and then actually even popped over towards Canubia. So you've got this mobile sort of city concept, and every 30 to 50 years we see it morphing a bit. A major morph has happened over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, Umhlanga didn't really exist. So Umhlanga is definitely, the current CBD, and I believe it'll be the CBD for the next 50 years probably, because as the airport expands, and it's just going to continue growing, the locality, the international, the imports, all those type of things are going to run through that. So you've got, sort of the port area, which is very important, but it's quite a dirty space. That port area is going to come, obviously the main infrastructure up there through the old CBD, and then you've got this new pristine Umhlanga Airtropolis zone, and then on the outliers that you've got Mount Edgecombe, and you've got Ballito, and you've got Simbali, so that's your northern sort of buffer. Your Durban North and Riverside areas are your southern buffer, and then everything in between, and ideally more northwards, is where we see value, and that's obviously exactly where Simbali is placed. I hear the Gold Coast estate introduced a first of kind in the country with regards to security. Can you tell us more about the special security measures in place? Sure. So, obviously we've talked about this hands-free, biometric system. That's great, and it's a really nice, facility to have. But more importantly, going into security, the abilities we have within an estate, if we plan them properly, which we pride ourselves on, is the ability to, as an example, load up your pocket money onto your kids' fingerprints, so they can go down into the clubhouse tuck shop and biometrically pay for a Kit Kat. It comes off their pocket money, go through the gates down to the beach or the dam or whatever they're going to, and it notifies you on your phone that John Smith's left through the dam gates at X time. So the ability to not just see security as a barrier, but more as a convenience tool, as well as a health security tool, as well as a freedom tool for your kids as well. And actually quite a cool. It's such a nice ability, so that your kid can go and actually go to a shop without any money, without any worries about that, and actually buy something. Like the old days, we used to walk up to the tea rooms and do that. So that's that freedom, the community-based stuff, all that stuff flows off the ability to have security. Do you think hand sanitizer will be a big part of our life, estate living in the future? I definitely think so. I think it's a reality. I think we've all had a wake up that we need to be more strict in terms of hygiene and public space gatherings and all that stuff. So I can't see it. I can't see it going back to where it was. It's always going to. I think will always be more cognizant of the need to sanitize, and I think even our cleaning facilities in our estates, all of that, we would never have thought about sanitizing roads and stuff like that. But I think, in the management plans going forward, we're definitely seeing that as something that will stay around. Trends on buying north. Do you feel it'll be in the Mshlanga in future terms of property value? What are the thoughts on the Mount Edgecombe estate in terms of future value? So look, Mshlanga's not new. A lot of freestanding homes. I think Mshlanga's almost, reached quite a high rate per square. It's Mshlanga has been around. The actual home areas have been around for quite a while. I think the commercial retail opportunities will still continue to pop up because it's the CBD. But in terms of residential buying, I think new stuff, cutting edge stuff like, for instance, the Arch, I think that those property values will continue to increase. It's something bespoke. It's iconic. So that will continue to go. But your apartments sort of around Ridgeside, at the back of Gateway, those were great. Like 8-9 years ago when they started launching at 600,000, 700,000. They're now at 1.4, 1.5. So we've seen that 100% growth in terms of property capital value over the last 8 years. So guys buying in there now, the market's saying those prices are 1.5, 1.6, 1.8. Not so much of a gain. It's not a new node, and I always look for new nodes in terms of buying. So it will continue to tick up, but it's not going to ramp up as much as your newer nodes like Sabaya with facilities, etc. How will COVID-19 influence your future development plans? Steph, I think, as we said, we're just going to make sure we are designing as if another one's coming. We know we're not out of this one yet. And there's obviously a phased release and all the rest of it, and we might see a surge in 3 months' time. And I don't know how the medical guys are dealing with it, but we've got to design as if these things are regular, because if we don't, then we're being remiss not to think about it. So certainly, access control, sanitizing options, abilities for our guys to still use facilities in the States if this happened again, phasing, maybe biometrics that will only allow 10 people in, smart technology that won't allow more than 10 people in, ability to check on your phone that the gym's got 3 people in it, the tennis court's free, the pool's only got 1 person, and the ability to communicate that through, so that if we go into the space again, we want to continue that lifestyle and design now for those type of occurrences, which actually we are. One of the other things was the integration of sort of little isolation work booths into some of the clubhouse facilities. So, we all know we're working from home and it gets quite monotonous and mundane. Just to be able to walk, go into a little isolation zone, have a cup of coffee, you at least say hello to 1 or 2 people, do your work, and have a little bit of reprieve from that factor as well. So that's also something that we're definitely looking at. How does your company ensure that Sabaya Coastal Precinct doesn't end up being another concrete jungle? Well, look, we're very lucky. We are extremely fortunate. We've got thousands of hectares of coastal forest, which is protected, which sort of wraps all of the whole coastline, which obviously all the developments are butting up onto. So once again, going into macro, micro, Sabaya location, excellent. Micro location, you have to be on the seaside of the M4. Without a question of a doubt, you're going to see property values 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50% higher. Forget the sea views. Just being on that side, because you've got that, that complete coastal forest, which cannot be touched. It always allows you that in 30, 40 years' time, it's still going to be there. It's something that's very, very unique, certainly to any development I've ever done. It's like securing your views and securing your breathing space and your greenery, and that's I would always recommend to guys that, it's a very good question, because you can have great location and someone sticks a big tower up in front of you. So you've got to make sure that obviously when you're buying, you're future-proofing your asset. Security layers cost on achievable rentals, which makes sense for owner-occupied units, but creates substandard net rentals. Is capital growth in the next 5 years sufficient to offer an investment return? So, Brendan, 100%. good question. I think, the investment return on a residential property we typically see in states about 5%. However, you gotta couple that with a capital investment return. So, if we saying, we're performing at roughly 8% capital growth on the total amount of your property asset. Let's park gearing for the moment, because you could probably gear a freestanding home as well. So your 8% on, let's say, 3 million is 240,000 a year. If that same 3 million rand house, is an example, in a freestanding area in Glen Ashley, is ticking up at 2 or 3% a year. The difference there, 60,000 or let's call it 80,000 versus 240,000, that 160,000 rand differential more than covers the 5%. Well, at the moment, their interest rates are 7%, 7.5%. So it more than covers that 2.5% differential in terms of your income. Plus, you're getting the property value growth. So as a net return, you're looking at sort of 8% plus 5%. It's 13% on your asset versus, let's call it a bank rate, repayment rate of 7.5% at the moment. So it's almost 2x, which is significant, especially with this latest interest rate cut. So wellness across the board, Cliff says. I think wellness, we've got a different concept of what wellness is at the moment. It's mental. The social lockdown is definitely something we've never experienced before, and hopefully never again. And that's why we're talking about these clubhouse facilities and the physical wellness, the mental wellness, the social wellness. And that's something that I think, guys in the States, and being able to walk your dog and go to a dog park, and, although social distancing has to be in place, those abilities and those, the ability to maybe go down to a clubhouse and get a test, as an example, without having to go to hospital. Those are the things, just to sort of calm any anxiety or whatever you may have that you think you've got it. So those are the little things that, when you've got this sort of security management environment, I think wellness is way, way, way more achievable than one of those than, being isolated. Okay, we're going to take two more because these questions are coming in thick and fast. What measures are in place to encourage wildlife, birdlife to return to these areas that you've developed on? Good question. So what we do as developers, particularly on the forest zones, is we actually mark out the forests where the actual sort of dense vegetation trees are. And we have a 40-meter buffer zone, which we take all the weeds and alien invasives out, including the forest. We take all those alien invasives out, we return it to grasslands. And what it does is it actually encourages the wildlife that are like the buck and the bushbuck and the dyke and all those. On an evening and an early morning, you'll see them coming out into these grasslands. They'll be feeding and then retreating back into the forest during the hot summer hours and coming back out again. So what we've seen is quite a surge in actual wildlife growth. Another classic example is we've had like fish. I think there's four pairs of fish eagles have returned to these areas because there's more wildlife. There's more smaller sort of prey that they would feed on. All the beaches, which previously along Peace Cottage and that weren't getting seen to, they're all getting cleaned. All the plastic and litter gets cleaned up because it's part of our offering to our buyer. We want to keep those facilities primo. So all of that's been cleaned up. We're actually doing E. coli testing and all that in the water. Any spikes are getting reported to City because they might have a sewage leakage in a pump station they don't know about. But because we're testing, we actually find that out, cleaning those water systems out. So developing is, it's always controversial because, you're taking away green space. But what you can do if you're responsible is you can actually clean up and make, really pristine existing green areas way more sustainable, way more usable, and more healthy. And we've definitely seen that in the Sabaya precinct. Okay. How has a drop in the repo rate impacted your developments? Look, so I think we've seen a massive surge in interest in terms of buyers. We at a point now where I think people that have got cash or concerned about investments they're all looking to property. It's something that is steadfast. It's tangible, and I think this interest rate is just going to stimulate guys even further to getting into properties. Getting higher debt ratios, which means lower deposits, better yields on their income, because the rental market will still stay the same, but your debt payments are lower. So those just look way more healthy. So yeah, we believe the property market is going to continue to grow. We understand there's going to be an economic downturn over the next, probably 3 to 6 months. But coupled with that, there's going to be demand. And yeah, we believe that security and convenience and lifestyle are paramount. And I think obviously capital investment into safe assets that can grow. We don't know where our pension schemes are going to go. Alan Gray, as an example, great investment space for pensions and all that, but they can't control what's happening in the market. So it's a blend of taking some really good financial advice from your financial advisors and paying proper attention to that, plus using a bit of intuition and focusing on good property areas that you want to rent from or live in or whatever. Those continue to grow. And that's the question I always ask myself: would I want to live here? If I buy something, would I want to live here? Would I want to rent this place? And I think if you continue to do that, you can't go too far wrong. Okay, guys. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you very much for dialing in, and we'll do another one next week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Observe the lockdown. God bless South Africa. Thank you very much.